Hello, everyone. My name is Olivia Chandler, and I'm a political science major with a concentration in legal studies. I chose modern democratic movements in China as my research topic. I chose this topic to learn about the history of democratization in China. In this presentation, I'm going to discuss how did democratic movements begin in China by examining historical and modern democratic movements and conclude with implications and findings. How did democratic movements start in China? The Chinese democratic movement started in the late 1970s. It is described as a series of organized social and political movements against the well-established one-party rule government. More specifically, these movements began during a period called the Beijing Spring in 1978. The Beijing Spring began in response to Mao Zedong's Cultural Revolution. The Cultural Revolution resulted in devastation and destruction to China's political development. Economic development was halted. It was a period where Chinese young men, known as the Rear Guards, killed several people in numerous ancient buildings. The Democracy Wall Movement. The start of democratic movements began with the human rights activist by the name of Wei Jixing. Jixing wrote The Fifth Modernization, which was an essay that called for the government to add democracy to the four modernizations. The four modernizations were goals created by former paramount leader Deng Xiaoping to strengthen certain areas in China. These areas are agriculture, science and technology, industry, and national defense. Jixing argued that democracy should be added to the list, and it was the only way for China to modernize itself. The essay was posted on the Democracy Wall and was the official start of the Democracy Wall movement of 1978. It was a long brick wall in the Qixing district of China where people used pictures to demand democratic reform. The Tiananmen Square protests. The death of Hu Yaobing played a crucial role in the start of the democratic movement in China. Yaobing was the CCP General Secretary under Deng Xiaoping. He was an outspoken advocate for democratic reform and was forced to resign in January of 1987. On April 22nd, the day of Yao Bing's funeral, college students gathered in the Tiananmen Square, and this event became to be known as the Tiananmen Square protests in Beijing. It is also known as the June 4th movement and the '89 democracy movement. The students demanded for democratic reform, but more specifically, a demand for more political freedoms and economic reform. Government officials were confused on how to deal with the continuous protests. Moderates like Zhao Zing, who was the current party general, argued for negotiations. However, radicals like Li Peng and Deng Xiaoping argued to forcibly stop the protests. As a result, the government implemented martial law. The military had complete control, and any and all civil rights were suspended. On June 3rd, army troops and tanks entered the square. They killed thousands in their path, and this massive student-led protest resulted in several activists and leaders imprisoned or exiled. The Democracy Party of China. The CDP was founded by Wang Yuke, Lin Wei, and Wang Donghai. The founders decided to establish local preparatory committees and a national preparatory committee to gain legal status. On June 25th of 1998, they signed the founding document called the Oakland Declaration of Establishment of the CDP Xinjiang Preparatory Committee. It was also on the same day of President Bill Clinton's visit to China. They also drafted a party constitution and published it online. There were four principles of the founding document. They were openness, peace, legality, and reason. The local preparatory committees were established in 28 provinces total. Some of these provinces were Shandong, Beijing, Shanghai, and Sichuan. On October 5th of 1998, China signed the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. The founders believed that this act left some hope to apply for legal status. However, that was not the case. Several committees in the provinces went to Civil Affairs Bureau and were continuously denied. Nonetheless, the government of China began to crack down on the party. Numerous members were either arrested or interrogated at the end of 1998. The Charter 08. One of the more modern democratic movements in China is the Charter 08. On December 8, 2008, numerous Chinese intellectuals and human rights activists signed the Charter 08. The manifesto was named after Czechoslovakia's Charter 77. The manifesto argued that the current political system allows no room for change, to eliminate one-party rule, and to abolish the crime of inciting the subversion of state power. It is divided into three parts. They are China's history, fundamental principles, and suggested reforms. Liu Xiaobo was the primary author and force behind the Charter 08 manifesto. He was a human rights activist and was a Nobel Peace Prize recipient in 2010. Diabo was arrested for inciting the subversion of state power and died in captivity due to liver cancer. Several others were either killed, arrested, or interrogated by the government. The Jasmine Revolution. The Jasmine Revolution began on February 20th, 2011, and ended on March 20th, 2011. It was influenced by the Jasmine Revolution in Tunisia during the Arab Spring. The Jasmine Revolution was first called by issuing a letter on a Chinese website called Books1.com and Twitter. Some of the human rights activists that were at the forefront of the Jasmine Revolution are Xing Wei, Deng Mao, and Ran Yufei, who was a famous Chinese blogger. They created a protest strategy that influenced thousands by assigning protest sites to demand change. Some of these protest sites were popular places such as Starbucks and McDonald's. Citizens went to their protest site every Sunday with their signs and yelling while they called on the government for democratic reform. However, the Chinese government was furious. They removed the word jasmine from online and banned the sale of jasmine flowers. Several protesters and journalists were either arrested or detained. More specifically, Ran Yufei was charged with inciting subversion of state power. He was released in 2011 and is now under surveillance by the government. What does modern democratic movements say about China? Modern democratic movements are very significant, despite no progress made, at least to the extent that protesters would like. Nonetheless, protesters were able to bring awareness to China's political development. It is evident that the political leadership believes that any opposition will undermine the stability of government. On the other hand, China signed the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, which indicates that China is in support of human rights. However, this has caused great confusion among Chinese citizens. There are 8 non-communist parties that are classified as democratic parties in China. 2 are China Democratic League and China Association for Promoting Democracy. There are also some implications to consider when examining democratization in China. Some scholars argue that the citizens of China feel that they have already reached democracy. This could possibly be due to the frequent village elections. China's improvement in their election procedures at a local level is an indication that they are moving in the right direction towards democracy. On the other hand, Xi Jinping, who is China's current president, may be moving in the other direction. Currently, the CCP voted yes to abolish constitutional limits on presidential terms. Whether China leans more towards democratic or authoritarian values, their transition to democracy will continue to face uncertainties and challenges in the future.